Good morning. Thanks for joining us. Today's webinar, sponsored by In Alliance, an in-training webinar, is entitled Winning with the Impossible Customer. My name is Todd Tracy. I'll be your host through this session. This webinar is brought to you by the Illinois Small Business Development Center at Illinois Eastern Community Colleges as part of this fall's Competitive Advantage Series. Before we get started, I'd like to go through just a little bit of housekeeping, as we like to keep the webinar very interactive. There's a variety of ways that you can address questions to me and to the other participants on the webinar. One is to merely raise your hand, and I'll unmute you, and you can speak over your speakers, your microphone, where everyone can hear your question, and we can communicate in that way. Or you can also type in a question, and I will reread the question for everyone and then answer it. In experience with these webinars, I will say that this is probably the more popular format, just to merely type in a question and for myself to reread it and then answer it from that point. But it's up to you on how that you choose to interact. You can see my contact information in front of you. This will also be posted at the conclusion of the webinar today. Feel free to contact me past this so that we can discuss any further information that wasn't clarified in today's presentation. Also, this webinar will be transferred to a video, and it will be available through the ISBDC at the IECC. Okay. Today's topic is winning with the impossible customer. As you can see, we have 4 objectives over the next hour that we are going to determine. First, we're going to get an idea on exactly what is the type of behavior and why a customer is acting in a challenging manner. I'm going to give you some techniques that are proven time and time again to handle irate and difficult customers. Learn how to and give you some techniques on learning how to respond to a difficult situation and not simply react, which is the common, most typical way that we tend to interact with a challenging situation. And lastly, I will give you some ideas on some places, on some ways that you can take some positive steps to stay calm and in control. One thing that we have to understand is that customers are very unique, and we need to continue to understand this in a variety of ways. Customers don't typically, thank goodness, aren't typically always have the tendency to react in an irate or irrational fashion. The largest part of our customers in business are very pleasant and enjoy the time with us, as well as the interaction and the products or services that we provide them. However, there are situations that do arise that can present itself differently than the friendly type situation that most businesses have with their customers. First and foremost, you need to understand that you cannot control your customers' behavior. In counseling clients for the past several years, I can tell you that this is one experience that I've had to work with many of my clients on. They feel that they can overpower their customer in some ways and feel that they have the ability to be more right than their customer. And it's not about right or wrong. It's perceptions that we're dealing with, and we'll talk about those at length here in a moment. However, one thing that you can do is you can control your response, and we're going to work on several techniques this morning that will give you some ideas on how this can be more in the now, and you can be ready with your controlled response instead of having to think more on your feet. And anyone can develop these skills. Customer service training, customer service skills are something that is applicable to virtually anybody in the workforce. They are skills that are not difficult to learn, and probably at some point or in everyone's life, they have correctly used these skills. So it's going back to that point in time and remembering, hey, this is what I did right. This is how I handled a customer situation. This is how I handled a family situation. This is how I dealt with a situation among my friends, and it worked out favorably because I responded correctly. One thing that is very important that you, when dealing with the customer, do not give up. Do not throw up your hands and say this is impossible. If anything, if it happens, let the customer do that. Put that ownership into the customer's hands to say, I cannot get this resolved. It is your job to do everything you can to resolve it. A lot of times what happens in these type of situations that are challenging or demanding is it just simply is a matter of fact the customer did not understand did not understand the expectation, or the customer just is merely having a bad day. Fortunately, as I've mentioned, difficult customers are very much not the standard in the workplace. And that's very fortunate for us, especially for those of us that deal in service and retail type industries. As we're coming up on the Christmas season, it tends to be that we hear more of the irrational and irate customer conflicts that arise with business, and that's merely just a result of there being more retail customers in the workplace, coming out to the stores and businesses, and it really, the statistic stays about the same. Remember that how that you handle difficult situation can affect your ability to work with your other customers who are not having a bad day. So as I mentioned, it's very important that you treat each customer in a very unique form, and it's very important that you understand that how the one customer reacts is not necessarily how another customer reacts. As many of you might recall or are currently going through a dating type situation, you never want to specifically refer to your date as to some negative things that happened maybe with a previous date that you had. You know how that would go for you. And this same type of thing applies specifically to the customer-employee type relation. It's very important that you be empathetic to the customer. It does not mean empathy. A lot of times when I'm working with business owners and in helping them with their customer service skills, when we go through role playing, it's very obvious that during the role playing situation, when the empathy starts, when we start working on empathetic type situations, I start noticing, and we start noticing that the empathy is translated in, oh, I'm guilty, or I'm admitting that I'm wrong because I feel what you're going through. I feel your pain, and I'm sorry that this has happened to you, and I'm sorry. And then it translates to, I'm sorry that I did this to you. And that is never the case. That's not what empathy means. It merely means that you feel the situation, and it's your responsibility to understand that the customer is upset, and you are willing to work with them. As soon as you can get the empathy for them and out on the table and out in the conversation, it tends to squelch the irate behavior from escalating. Remember, it's always up to you. There is always something that you can do. Don't ever give up in trying to correct a situation. If the customer comes in and says, I want this product replaced, and you have a no guarantee policy per se, and you say it's just, we cannot do that, we just don't, it's not our policy. Well, the customer is going to end that conversation, said, that's all I want, you said you can't do it, that our relationship is over. However, if you address the situation, we're willing to do this. We're willing to give you a discount on your next purchase. We are willing to accommodate you in a variety of ways, including giving additional service. We know that you're unhappy with that product. We are willing to call you when an upgrade of that product comes in, and we'll consider a discount at that time. And there's all kinds of things that can be talked about outside of simply the customer wants to return the product. Remember, there's a lot of signs out there that have been, and there's of course a lot of jokes that's associated with it, that the customers are always right. We being in business, we know that's not necessarily the truth. The reason that came about was that the customer needs to be right because you need to satisfy the customer. How we need to modify our thinking on this is we need to always give the customer the benefit of the doubt. We're not sure exactly if they're upset with the product or service or the business or their customer service that they got at your store, what that it might possibly be, but they have a reason for being upset. So it's important that you begin the listening process to determine what caused this. And then also I want to bring up, all of us are human. All of us have to do, and especially those of us that work in retail and service and that type of thing, and deal with a lot of people on a daily basis. It tends to happen that we have a bad day. It tends to happen that we got up on the wrong side of the bed and just things aren't going right for us, and it tends to come out as we are communicating. Make sure that that does not happen in customer situations. It's something that you have to work on, and it will never go well for you at any time that it does come out, because you must always remain positive and professional. It is your job. You are in the business to be that person, not to defend who and what you believe in and who and what you think the mission of your company is. These are bulleted points of broad terms as to what typically sets off a customer. This typically is where the frustration begins. First and foremost is a broken promise. Now this can be in the form of expectations, this can be in the form of written documentation, or this could be just a verbal agreement. These may or may not be fact, they may be the perception. So when we're dealing with these type of situations, we always look, what did the customer perceive and what did they get in return as a result of that perception? Another very common thing that causes frustration, there tends to be a little conflict, there tends to be a problem with the product or service, so the customer merely wants to get in contact with the business to get it corrected. Escalating the frustration is when they cannot get in contact with that company. They can't navigate their website. They send a voicemail, an email, they might post something on the Facebook wall of the company. All those go unanswered. And if it goes longer than 24 hours, I can assure you that that person is escalating in their frustration with this product or services. Another thing that will set them off is if you give them negative responses. If they merely just have a question about the product, if they merely say, hey, this is not working for me, and you reply, that's not our policy to correct this, or if you were to blatantly say, no, you're wrong in how you understand this, the escalation of their anger is going to intensify very quickly. Lastly, simply the product or service just has low quality and maybe a consistency with the product or service. This is something that escalates, especially in restaurants. Going out to a meal, and typically the meal is good, and then slowly watching the quality of the service diminish, as well as maybe there's some rudeness by some wait staff. That's going to escalate from just merely a minor conflict to a minor confusion to a very frustrated or angry customer. Before we go into the steps of to actually handling some of these situations, it's very important that you understand that you have to have patience and you have to keep your composure at all times. It is proven not only in the consumer business learning, but also in family planning, and it's in virtually every social psychology book that is out there, that if you do not respond in a way that shows that you're empathetic and patient from very early on in the conversation, there is a perception by the individual that you're unwilling to work with them, that you are being defensive, and that you're trying to win in the situation. A customer never wants to feel like you're trying to win the conversation. They want to feel you're trying to accommodate them. So it's very important that you listen, damn it. It's very important that you empathize with the customer's situation. And you always want to communicate with positive statements, and we'll talk about that here directly. These are the 6 steps for handling to coming to a conflict resolution with a customer. We're going to go through each one of these individually. Step 1, you want to make sure that your technique for handling difficult customer situations is the very first thing is that you want to get very focused on what the situation is. All of us have ways that we concentrate, and this is what the purpose of step 1. We've got to prepare ourselves for concentration, whether it be taking a deep breath, crack those cheeks and put a smile on your face, and always sit up or stand up straight. Most situations when they are face-to-face, it is in a stand-up situation. It's rare that in a situation where a customer would be working with you where you're both sitting down. Make sure that if you are sitting down at a desk or something to that regard, make sure that you stand up and you become on eye level with your customer. It's very important that both of you achieve the same ground. In other words, you're taking up the same space, both vertically and in the same area, so that you have the ability to closely communicate, and you can be as close enough that you can understand and feel each other's conversation. If by chance this conflict takes place over the phone, I recommend immediately that you sit up in your chair and you posture yourself on your desk that you are in a point of attention. It's very common for this to happen, one of two things. You immediately see when there's a conflict arising to slump over your computer, slump over your desk, maybe put your head in your hands. You are already in a defensive mode. You already have gotten yourself into a position that you are diminishing the ability to focus on what is at hand. And of course, instead of slumping over, if you have a chair that leans back, don't lean back and put your feet up on the desk or anything like that. Make sure that your back is very straight, very erect, and that you are prepared to listen and prepared to focus on what is unfolding. Every person has a story to tell. I found this out when I was 14, 15 years old and worked in a local grocery store in my hometown. All I did was just stock shelves and carried out groceries for patrons as they came through. I was not somebody that just opened up conversation. I was always friendly and smiled, but wasn't somebody that just tended to talk a lot. But it amazed me at this early age when I would walk people to their car with their groceries, and whether I'd carry them or have them in their cart. And as I was walking out to their car, they would tell me some story that was happening in their life. I may or may not even know this individual. And they would tell me something that happened in their family, something that happened at their church, something that had happened in the evening, just something, some story that they wanted to tell me. And it would oftentimes continue all the way till I got their groceries in the car. A lot of times they would see I was finished and they would bid me farewell and would part ways. But other times I would finish and complete my task for them and they were still talking. They were still wanting to finish and complete what was on their minds. Well, this helped me understand that this is the way people act in all types of situations, not just in a passive situation like that, but also when they have their story to tell about what is wrong and why they're having conflict. They want to tell their story, their complete story, and of course, their version of the story. If you take time and you try to interact or in that story, you are risking that they feel that you are trying to win in the situation and overcome them until they've been able to unfold all that is on their mind concerning their misunderstanding. Step 3, you want to actively listen to the customers. And actively listen means that you are engaged. You're not just blindly looking at them as though the deer's in the headlights. You're engaging them with eye contact. You want to nod your head, say, I understand. Go on. I see. And you want to say these very calming words, and it shows that you are validating what they are saying. There is very distinct possibility when they are rambling with their story, when they are maybe being very succinct in their story. They're going from this happened at stage 1, this happened at stage 2, stage 3, and this is why now I am upset. Whatever direction that they're taking, there is usually a central theme of their complaint. Sometimes, let's go back to our restaurant example, it starts out with what the meal was just not cooked properly, and this is the second or third time it's happened, and the waitress just was not responsive to our needs. Well, if that's being the case, then what is happening there is potentially then the waitress is maybe not getting their order correctly. The waitress is not taking their food back to be recooked or properly prepared the way that they want it. There could be some issues there. Instead of them just they were trying to they were trying to finish their meal and it just was not proper because the waitress did not give them alternatives to do it. So it may be the waitress was not handling the conflict as it was arising, or plainly, it could be the meal. So you want to make sure that you're listening very closely. I always recommend, and quite frankly, it is not always feasible or possible to do that, but I recommend that if all possible, take notes while that you are having a conversation. This is very easy to do if you're having a phone conflict of some kind over the phone, and sometimes not so easy to do it face-to-face, but when you can do it, make sure and just simply state to the person, say, listen, I want to grab a few notes. I understand you're upset. I want to grab a few notes so that I can keep on track with everything that you're saying. 9 times out of 10, you can do something like that. There is a time that the conflict arises so quickly that it would be rude to try and grab a notebook or something like that. But I like to have them around everywhere, just especially in places where you might be communicating with a customer. Step 4. You want to acknowledge the customer's emotional state, and this goes back to the empathy. So you've listened to their story now. You've gotten, well, let's step back. You've prepared yourself to focus. You started the listening process, and you've heard them complete their story. Now is the time for you to show empathy. And you have to do this even if you do not agree with their stage. All you have to state in order to even give yourself the ability to say, I understand that you are upset. I understand that this product or service did not meet your needs. I understand that our customer service was not at the level that you expected it to be. It doesn't say that it's not at your level. It's not that you feel that you're upset with anything. You're not that they're defensive of how that you conduct your business. You're merely recognizing that the individual has been wronged in their mind, and now you are respecting them by empathizing. It's very important that when you're and we know this when dealing with our children or with dealing with other people that we care about, to use their names often instead of just saying hey you or this type of thing. If you don't know the customer very well, it's never inappropriate to say Mr. or Mrs. Doe. We are where I'm listening, and so please let me know what, to make sure that you give me the full story, and then I'm here. I apologize as it's happened to you. And if you don't know or if you know them better, it's very appropriate to use their first name and say, Jane, I understand that this is an issue and this is a concern, and we're here to correct this for you. And I apologize that it's happened to you. And make sure that you use their names and use it quite often, of course, always in appropriate places. You want to make sure when you go to step 5 that you start restating the situation and then gain their agreement. This is where the note-taking takes really an important role in this, because you're able to go back to your notes and restate it exactly in the words that maybe have been given to you. And you want to do this as often as possible. If you've been able to identify the situation, if you've been able to clarify the specific point that was brought up that tends to be lending itself to what escalated the conflict, you want to talk specifically in exact words about that as possible. Going back to our restaurant scenario. During the conversation, it was brought up that our waitress said that the cook told me that you ordered your steak well done or medium well, and he said that he cooked that medium well. Well, okay. There we have it. The cook has been involved in it indirectly. The waitress has already taken a defensive situation, and the customer has the perception that their steak is not medium well. So when you're working with the customer in their exact words, saying, okay, so let me understand this correctly. You're stating that our waitress stated that the cook stated that it was cooked to medium well, and you are saying that it was not. And the customer will respond yes or no if you did that correctly. You can always use a verifying statement to say, is that correct? And that becomes puts it into a very much of a yes or no situation. And this goes into like a sales technique. So you want the customer, even though they are an upset customer, you want them to get the saying yes as many times as possible. So you want to use a verifying statement as much as possible. Did I state this the way that you said? Is this correct? And then they will say yes, and you want them to do that as many times as possible. And of course, as you're going along, make sure that you ask for clarification for those parts that you do not understand. It's not inappropriate at all to say, I'm confused, could you please repeat such and such, whatever that you need said. It's very important that you ask questions to the point that you are only using them to clarify and to make sure that you understand the situation. I never recommend that you ask questions that imply something that has not been brought up. For instance, in this particular situation with the restaurant, if you were to say something like, well, what exactly did your steak look like, and how did you know that it wasn't medium well? That's irrelevant. That's irrelevant, because what you're doing is you're trying to test the customer's knowledge of food preparedness. They may or may not have any ability to get from point A to point B in answering that question for you. And all that does is that just brings up another set of possible confusion and frustration. So it's not that the steak was not cooked to their preparedness. The facts are that the waitress and possibly the cook talking through the waitress did not relay to the customer what they needed resolved in their perception of how the steak was prepared. Now, step 6. This is when you can start doing your active problem solving. For most situations, thank goodness, steps 1 through 5 are followed. The customer should be calmed down. You have gotten yourself calm. You've gotten their entire story out. You've become empathetic with what they have done, and you have come with some sort of resolution as how best to, you've come up with the items that need to be addressed so that you can resolve this. And then you can start diagnosing the problem and develop what you think needs to be the action plan. It could be merely with the restaurant situation. If this was an isolated incident with this customer, especially if it's a repeat customer, say, hey, we're sorry it wasn't cooked to your perfection. Your meal's on us tonight, and oh, by the way, here's a dessert to go home with, or here's a coupon for the next time that you come in, and we'll make sure that we prepare that exactly the way that you order it and take care of it, and we want you, we take pride in you being a customer. It's very important that during this situation that you stay focused. In my years in working with customer service training with business owners, when we do role playing and when I've actually observed this situation in real life scenarios, I have noticed that the business owner, manager, whoever that might be resolving this conflict, this is where they lose focus. In their minds, they think that they have got it resolved, they're done, now we're just merely talking it out and that type of thing. The problem can escalate again here at this juncture. And also, it could also lend, especially because your ultimate goal is to get this customer to come back and for them to be a repeat customer. If you don't stay focused during this section, this occurrence, whatever problem occurred that caused this, might arise again in the future, if not with this customer, with someone else. So it's important that you stay focused so that for your own management control, that you can resolve this not only with this customer, but you can resolve it in your company so that it does not repeat itself. And last but not least, I mentioned that virtually all the time, if you've gone through these steps appropriately, you have probably resolved the conflict. There are cases where these steps just do not handle extreme situations, and we'll address those in just a moment. This is some, we're going to go through now some just calming techniques that you can use, especially for these extreme irate customers. It's important that you understand that with this simple graph that's in front of you, that customers get to their peak iration and frustration at different rates, and some never escalate to the point of being a full-blown hostile type situation, thank goodness. This kind of gives you the 7 steps of irrationality and frustration that customers will go through. Whenever you get them whenever they talk to you, they're somewhere between hopefully 2 and 5, but we're hoping that they're more between 2 and 4, and hopefully more than 2 and 3. The biggest part of customers that have a problem is somewhere between 2 and 3 that they are addressing the situation with someone else. However, we don't necessarily know that where they're coming into it. So it's your job to understand where they are at. Very rarely, thank goodness, does someone come in and address the situation at their peak escalation of irateness. So it does happen. I will tell you that this is one of the more difficult situations to deal with. However, steps 1 through 5, 1 through 6 that I just gave you, go back and review those. They will work for that particular situation. Also, it's just very important that you stay focused and allow yourself to hear their story out when they might be in a rage and when they might be very upset with whatever the situation might be. Just let them hear it out, because it will de-escalate at some point, but it can be quite difficult on your part to have to sit there and listen to what's being unfolded. You want to make sure that you calm the customer very early on. There's a variety of ways that can do that. A smile is one of the best ways to always greet a customer, with a smile, and even through the situation very early on, a smile is fine. And even when you're being empathetic with them, smile with them in a very calming smile and say, "We will get this fixed. We are going to get this addressed. We're going to work together on this to where that you are a happy customer and you come back and you meet with us." I have a drawing of some cookies that are in front of you. I worked with a real estate agent as a client some years ago, and I always asked her. She always had cookies up on her desk there, and it seemed like, they weren't ever eaten, but they were fresh cookies every single day. And I asked her why those were there, and she says a good chocolate chip cookie sometimes can calm down the worst situation. It was very funny, but she often would relay stories to me that someone would come in and be very upset with how she was listing her home or listing their home, or whether it's selling, whatever responsibility she had for that particular customer, and she would always say, "Hey, bake some cookies today. Let's sit down here and share a cookie and let's talk about this." And she said it would squelch the situation time. It's kind of it diverts the situation, and quite frankly, who doesn't like a cookie? So that was kind of where that she came from with that. So be creative on how that you calm the customer, and don't necessarily and don't ever be don't ever think that maybe just your voice and your presentation is the best way to comment. Use props such as the cookies or something like that. That helps also, okay? You want to make sure that if you fail to acknowledge their emotion, that they may become angry. And we've hit on this several times, but if they perceive that you are aloof to the situation, this is very oftentimes will escalate the situation, and it most certainly will result in you not retaining that customer for future sales. I've prepared for you here 4 very distinct replies that you can use in almost every single situation. Just tweak them to your common way of talk, and of course tweak them ever so slightly to your situation. But occasionally you will deal with a customer that is giving you offensive or abusive language. Never ever return that same type of conversation with and be offensive and abusive yourself. That is never a way to resolve a situation. Certainly not, and it does not adhere to any type of professional norm. If that language starts coming out, if they're being very hostile and offensive to you, very calmly just say, "I'm sorry that there has been a problem. I will do everything I can to assist you." A lot of times that will take care of the situation, very straightforward. However, if they didn't hear you say it, or you didn't project your empathy to them well enough in your voice, and they weren't able to grasp on it, and it continues, then it is time. Do not give them more than one time. If it's this is not a three strikes and you're out type thing. Start the process of trying to get them to calm down their at least the hand of how of the language and abusiveness that they are starting to give you. So you give them the one time. Say, listen, I'm right here. I'm here to assist you. Let's talk about the problem. If it continues, if they're cussing or if they're doing something like that, say, listen, I'm trying to assist you. Could you speak in a professional manner? That particular statement will calm down virtually all offensive customers. This will typically diffuse the situation right there. You didn't call it cussing. You didn't call them out on anything that they were particularly doing. You just merely brought it to their attention that we're trying to be professionals here and get this situation resolved. If it still continues, and again, this is rare, but if it does continue, say, I appreciate your frustration, substitute anger, concern there, whatever works for you, and I'm trying to assist you. If you cannot speak in a professional manner, I will have to ask you to leave. If by chance you are not the owner of the company, if you're just a manager, or if you have someone that you answer to, you might also want to say, I will have to ask you to speak to my manager, or to a manager, to my owner, something to that regard. Because now you're showing them that, listen, I'm here to listen. I'm here to communicate with you. I'm here to be empathetic with what's going on. But obviously you don't have enough respect for me to talk to me in a professional manner. I'm going to have to either ask you to leave or speak to someone else. Typically that will resolve it. And if they say, I do want to speak to the manager, fine. Have it set up in your company to where that you have that you can have that conflict transferred to them. And then last but not least, if the abusiveness will not tone down, all you have to say, as you are unable to speak in a professional manner, please leave and come back later when we can calmly address your concern. And if the situation presents itself, walk away. If it does not, then you'll have to take in consideration what that you need to do. Okay? Okay. Sorry about this. I've got just a little bit of a conflict here. Bear with me. Apologize. Just a little technical glitch there. There we go. Now we're back. Okay. Sometimes you do have these customers, as we mentioned here previously, some that just have unrealistic expectations, and you cannot resolve those. What you need to make sure that you do is you stay on task through this entire process. Go back to the 6 techniques again and ensure that you did everything correctly to not drive them into an irate state. It is your responsibility to stay calm, professional, and focused. If you can do those three, if you have those 3 qualities, you can keep it positive, and you continually focus on what you can do. Then it totally puts the ownership on the customer to resolve it at that point, or give you the ability to resolve it. If they want to stay mad forever, then that's what they should do. I would recommend, and I spoke with some people in a restaurant association a couple of months ago, and they were talking about this type of thing, and I said, if you're managers, if you feel as owner, if you feel you did everything possible to resolve the situation before that person leaves, you need to suggest to them that that would be glad to serve you again in the future. But if you feel that our service or our product is not up to your standards, we would happily and encourage you to go to one of our competitors. When you actually say that, it's putting the words that's already in the minds of that particular customer, and there is nothing wrong with that. One, it gives you resolve in your mind that if you're willing to say that as a final parting conversation, then that is going to give you conviction that you did everything possible that you could to resolve the situation. Okay? Thank goodness that this is a very rare situation, and it's probably such a small percentage. It would be hundredths of a percent of your total customer base is something that you cannot resolve at all. Okay, now we're assuming that we did resolve the conflict. Now all that you have to do is repair that relationship. It just very simply it just simply boils down that you have to follow up and follow through. Make sure that if at all possible that you give a call back to verify that the problem was resolved. And I recommend this even with our retail customers who might do and might see a large volume of customers, restaurant customers. You just have to remember that it's very infrequent that this happens. And if you'll take the time to give a courtesy call to make sure the problem is resolved, and then follow through. If you have any thing that you said that you were going to do, you keep any promise that you were going to do. You got these all written down. You follow up with them. Say, I hope everything's okay. I have done this for you, and this is what we agreed on. And typically, the customer is going to rejoice that you cared enough about them to extend it beyond just the point of conflict, but to start it back into the point of friendship and continue your degree of professionalism with them. We started this and we've spent the last 45 minutes talking a lot about the conflict, but of course the ultimate goal of the conflict is to get a positive outcome. Though it's a very uncomfortable situation, it's very important that you continue to follow up and that you repair any type of damage to any relationship. Customers are not of the loyal kind anymore. The big three auto dealers, GM, Ford, Chrysler, in all of their customer service trainings, all their marketing, they're finding that at an all-time high that they're not having customer loyalty as they have had in the past. You don't have a Chevy person anymore. You're not a Ford man. You're not a Chrysler woman. People are just do not have the loyalty they had. So you don't want to lose any customer that you might have. And when you show them that you are willing to work with them at their point of low with your company, and show that you're trying to be the most professional individuals you can, you will retain them as a customer, and they oftentimes will become your greatest advocate. So you take a conflicting situation, and you could actually turn them to be one of your greatest advocates because you show them that you care about the outcome. You want to make sure that you keep yourself in control, and you've got to prepare yourself for difficult situations at all times. We're going to quickly go through some of these techniques. You want to learn to respond, not react, and of course you want to stay calm under pressure. Reacting to the situation is the easy way out. Responding takes effort on your part. Responding requires you to take your ego, to take your own self needs, to take maybe the value that you have in the business that you do, and putting that all on the back burner during the time that you need to listen and focus as to what the problem is at hand. Reacting is very easy. You just get on your heels and you charge back with everything that you've got, and that does not ever resolve a situation, ever. It doesn't work typically in your family situation, and it never works in your business customer relationship. You must be the professional, but unfortunately your customer has the option to be. So it's up to you if you can help them be professional in this conversation all. You want to think rationally. because it often is the reason that the problem will be resolved. Your ability to remain rational is probably going to affect the outcome of the conflict more than any singular one thing. People experience stress and pressure differently. You've got to learn what your technique says, and you've got to learn how to keep your composure. We all have different ways of doing that. You've got to find out those things about yourself. What happens? Do you get red in the face? Do you start getting a little a little sick to your stomach? Does your body get a little tensed up? Whatever these things are, there's a physical characteristic. When you start losing your calmness, we all have a physical trait that starts. I start gritting my teeth. I get tension in my face. And I know there that I need to take a deep breath. It's always good to have a little water around, and I like dispersing water bottles around like office situations in different places. Wherever you think a conflict possibly could arise, grab a water bottle, because when tense situations come up, your mouth dries out and you start losing your voice, and you want to keep that agitation at a minimum, and you want to drink a little bit of water. It's a very good technique to use. You want to start using positive imagery. If during the initial situations, if you've got a beach that you love and that's a calming place, put a picture of that beach in your head just for a little while, just to get you through it. Whatever type of positive imagery that works for you, put that in your head. And then also, even outside of situations, use a lot of positive self-talk. Say to myself, hey, Todd, we can get through this today. I've got to do a webinar today, and I need to remain calm, and people want to hear what I have to talk about today. And all those type of things become just positive self-talk that we use, and you can do that with any type of situation. And when you go into a conflict, say, goodness sakes, I resolved a conflict with my teenage son last night. And if I can resolve that, I can surely handle this customer's problem today. So look for those type of things that you can reinforce yourself with. One good thing about conflict is it's taking place right in front of you and within your knowledge. You're not hearing about it on the street. People aren't complaining behind your back. They are, if they're willing to come to you and address the problem, at least you have the opportunity to retain them as a customer. You may or may not have that ability if you never knew there was a conflict in the first place. Whenever you're looking at customers, you want to look when you're taking an inventory of your impossible customers. Whenever you're dealing with them, this is a good inventory to look at. Is this a first-time customer? In other words, is this customer come in your store for the very first time you've ever seen them, and this one product or service that they bought from you, they're disgruntled about, they're upset? Well, there may be a pattern there, and exactly what it is. So you want to try to resolve exactly why it is. And then also in the back of your mind, if you lost this customer, is that going to be that big of a deal to you? Even though it's a new customer, is there a pattern here that they just came in and were maybe looking for conflict whenever they came to the door? Secondly, is this a repeat customer? Now, this is one you've got to be very concerned about. Is this one that comes in quite often and spends time and money with you on a regular basis, and now they're having a conflict? Well, this one you need to do everything you can possibly do to resolve the conflict, because you never want to leave one of your retained customers. Or is this a customer that you've known for a while and just is habitually impossible? They one out of every 2 times that you see them, they have a problem with something that you do, and there are those particular customers out there, and you've got to deal with that. And then another one is this particular customer impossible with other businesses? For those of you that have downtown businesses and that type of thing, you share a lot of customers. You tend to know a lot of people together. Does this person come in and upset with a lot of businesses? And there's nothing at all wrong of the businesses getting together and sharing this information. And then one of the businesses, when this comes up, saying, hey, you had a conflict down at Terry's flower shop the other day too. And they'll say, what's going on with that? How did you know about that? So, well, we all talk, and we're all a part of a community here, and And is there something else going on that we need to talk about? Could you relay that you had the problem here and you had the problem the other day, and we're sorry as a community that we can't service you. And sometimes things will open up from that point of view. And of course, last but not least, you can't leave without saying, is there a complaint that they have in other ways, and are they putting it maybe out there in social media somewhere where you could actually see it in writing? If this happens, of course, you want to resolve the conflict in the same manner, professional as you would anywhere. You never want to resolve it online. That will never go well for you at any point. You want to it's always good if they post, and if you don't know the individual, or even if you do know the individual, if they post a negative comment on there, say, hey, if you already know the number, say, hey, I'm going to give you a call. When is a good time that you can be reached? I'd like to resolve this. And then if you don't know the number, say, hey, could you give me a phone number? I'd like to resolve this in the next, at your convenience. Please give me a phone number and I'll call you immediately. Put that right on the post, of course, and then everybody else that's in there will be able to see that you're trying to resolve this. If they come back again and start putting some negative things out there, just say, listen, I'm trying to get a hold of you to resolve this situation. Just out of respect to the situation, I'm not going to discuss this openly in a public forum. I want to privately meet with you on this. If you don't get any response from them, and if you haven't been able to reach them by phone, or you haven't been able to contact them anyway, and you haven't heard anything back, I always like to wait about 24 hours, because Facebook and Twitter is very much in the now. It's very most people that, at least if they're willing to post it on a public forum, they typically are well users of it and are on it quite regularly. If you haven't heard back with them in 24 hours, just post below their comments, just post in there that you have made every effort to resolve the conflict and you're now awaiting their response. Okay? And that's all that you have to do, and keep it very simple and keep it very simple. Do not engage in any type of conflict resolution in writing over the social networks. However, don't be inclined to merely delete a post because it has a negative comment, especially if you're in control of that page. The only ones I would recommend you delete is anything that has inappropriate language or threatening language in it, and of course address that with another post to say that is why it was deleted. Okay, that concludes today's webinar. I will open this up for questions now. Either raise your hand, I'll call on you, or if you want to type in something, would be glad to read it for everyone else that's participating. Okay, you have my contact information in front of you, as well as the contact information for the Illinois Small Business Development Center at Illinois Eastern Community Colleges, based out of Olney, Illinois. If you don't have any further questions, I really appreciate you spending the morning with me, and have a great day.